Hello and welcome to another episode of Belongs to the Shadows, the podcast. I'm your creepy host, Jaime Bennett. And as always, listener discretion, your discretion is strongly advised. On this episode, I'm going to be talking about Aleister Crowley. I kind of hinted at it the last time. I hope you enjoyed the last podcast episode. And I hope you enjoy this one. Please like, share, subscribe, support my channel, please. Please. It would be very much appreciated so that I can continue to do these podcasts for you. So, without further ado, as always, this is organic. I know people use organic a lot, but I come with a warning label. I read these articles to you as I am telling you about the topic at hand. So, mispronunciation is going to happen a lot. I am infamous for mispronouncing things. It's my dialect, I tell you, it is my dialect. It'd probably be very helpful, and I say this every single time, if I looked at the material ahead of time before doing these podcasts, but I don't like to do that. I really do not like to do that. I like to look at the material as I'm doing the podcast. It's organic. I'm going to use that word again. It's more organic that way. Anyhow, without further ado, let's dive in. So, I always give credit where credit is due, and this, of course, comes from the Google page. If you look up Aleister Crowley, and I always try to put the links below. A lot of this is going to be in quotations, so I cannot take credit for it. But there you have it. Anyways, Aleister Crowley, if you don't know who that is, he was an English occultist. He was born October 12th of 1875 and died December 1st of 1947. Whew, here we go. Let's dive in, shall we? There is a podcast that talked about, there's a lot of podcasts, let's face it. Like any subject that I can talk about on this podcast has already been done numerous times. So, if you've watched any other podcasts, listened to any other podcast about Aleister Crowley, I'm probably going to be repeating some of the material. But I just wanted to, dive in and learn about Aleister Crowley myself. Not sponsored by the television series Supernatural, but Aleister Crowley is in the Supernatural television series, and that's where I first heard about Aleister Crowley. I will be honest. That's where I first heard about Aleister Crowley. But I had watched Supernatural. I'm going to be aging myself here. I had watched this show Supernatural when I was in community college. I just recently celebrated my 45th birthday. Yes, I'm 45 years old. And I know you can't see me on here because this is in podcast format. But if you go back and look at some of my TV series Belongs to the Shadows. I can't even talk. Goodness. See, there's that mispronunciation thing. If you go back and watch some of my television episodes or my show episodes of Belongs to the Shadows, you'll see what I look like. A lot of people say that I do not look my age, and I always tell those people, you're my favorite person. Because I feel every bit of my age sometimes. So yeah, there's that. All right, let's dive into some of the Aleister Crowley topics. Dive into some of, what has been written about him. This comes from Tidal, and I'll link it below like I always do, because like I said, I want to give credit where credit is due. And this comes from Tidal.com magazine article called Crowley. And it was published on September 13th of 2023 by Sean Brady. So this is Sean Brady's article, and I'm just going to be like skimming it for you. The Cult of Crowley. So Jimmy Page, if you don't know who that is, we can't be friends. Anyhow, Jimmy Page bought his house. The Beatles put him on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. Ozzy called him Mr., but who exactly was this Aleister Crowley? The Great Beast 666. This article that Sean Brady had published for Tidal is going to take a deep dive into the legendary occultist strange dark world. So when Ozzy Osbourne posed the question, what went on in your head, to one Mr. Crowley on his 1980 solo debut, Blizzard of Oz, it was taken by many as absolute proof of the singer's satanic tendencies. Now, I personally love Ozzy Osbourne, and yes, like, there's always been the rumors going around that, his music's evil and blah, blah, blah. But I really like Ozzy Osbourne. I think that he is a very talented individual, and I do like a lot of his music. And if you really listen to his music, like, it's not evil. I think that a lot of people, put that on rock music because of the upside down crosses that they wear, of black clothing that they wear. Who cares? Who cares? Like, it's a persona that they take on when they go on stage. You just have to see how the person treats other people. Anywho, let's get back on the subject. Oh, goodness. The British occultist, poet, and magician Aleister Crowley had been dubbed the wickedest man in the world, and a man we'd like to hang by the British press during the first half of the 20th century. Even before Ozzy Osbourne's infamous bat biting and Alamo urination incidents, the ex-Black Sabbath frontman seemed well on his way to inheriting both mantles. Again, I love Ozzy Osbourne. I used to watch the Osbourne Show, not sponsored, by the way, but I used to watch the Osbourne Show. They had like a reality show, and I loved watching that show, and I could tell that Ozzy really cares about his fans, and he really cares about his family, and he's not evil. Ozzy is a big old teddy bear, so like, people need to not be so judgmental. But Osbourne's song, co-written with guitarist Randy Rhoads and bassist Bob Daisley, sprang from honest curiosity rather than some infernal discipleship. Here we go with the mispronunciation thing. Discipleship. There we go. Gold star, Jamie. In quotations, I never did this black magic stuff. Ozzy told Rolling Stone in 2002, insisting that he and his Black Sabbath bandmates couldn't conjure up a fart. The reason I did Mr. Crowley was that everybody was talking about Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley ignites, rumors. Aleister Crowley ignites fascination. People wonder about something that could be considered supernatural or people wonder about mysterious figures such as Aleister Crowley. Hey, I'm talking about it on my podcast. So there you go. Aleister Crowley was born in 1875. He was raised in a fundamentalist Christian family and essentially spent his entire life repudiating their strict teachings. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times when you are brought up in a strict Christian family, you have the tendency to rebel. You have the tendency to explore what else is out there and what other religions are out there. I was brought up in a Christian family, and I was brought up evangelical Protestant. I ended up going to a Catholic university. I wanted to see what the Catholic religion was like. I wanted to see the other religions that were out there, honestly. I just felt the need to explore. He was a polymath with a voracious appetite, and goodness, I need to start wearing my glasses. And an all-eclipsing ego who refused to be satisfied with anything short of godhood. He rose through the ranks and alienated himself from historic secret societies like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Ordo Templi Orientis, ultimately founding a religion known as Thelema and appointing himself as its prophet. Okay, I made it through that. I don't think I butchered the pronunciations too much. Crowley's study of magic, in quotations, he added the K to differentiate his occult workings from simple illusion. This led him on a path of experimentation that encompassed journeys to India and North Africa, and sexual hedonism, drug abuse, sadomasochism. There we go. Sadomasochism. I'll get it eventually. And mysticism, guided by his doctrine. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Goodness gravy. This is interesting. There's a lot to unpack here, to be honest. So, that anything goes dictum goes a long way towards explaining why Crowley, or at least his image, continues to enthrall musicians more than 3/4 of a century after Crowley's death in 1947. While Blizzard of Oz served as many a young metalhead's introduction to the name of Aleister Crowley, it was far from the first time that the self-professed Great Beast 666 had cast his spell on the rock world. So, let's unpack that, honestly. Like, why do people see rock and roll as evil, other than what I had mentioned earlier of the upside down cross images, wearing black mascara? Why? Is it because, like, they sing about people like Aleister Crowley? Honestly, I don't see rock and roll as evil, and I never did, not even growing up. Now, a lot of my relatives seen it as evil, but I actually listened to the lyrics of a lot of Ozzy Osbourne's songs, and what was considered to be evil actually did not mention anything evil whatsoever. You need to listen to the lyrics of the songs, honestly. I think that the reason why rock music is considered rebellious is because they put it out there. They put it out there, plain put. They are honest to a fault. And a lot of their lyrics are very, very honest about society. A lot of times you have rock musicians who are being extremely honest about their political views, and that's considered evil in a lot of people's eyes. Sippy, drinking some drinking some soda while I'm reading this to you. I should probably drink more water, to be honest, especially being that I live in the South. The devil went down in Georgia, as they say. I live in Georgia. It's freaking hot here. So, his bald visage appears in the upper left-hand corner of the cover art for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I never noticed that. I need to look. Sandwiched between Indian guru Sri Yukastarwar Guri and actress Mae West. Goodness, I butchered that name all together, but you can see the pronunciation of it when I share this article. Appropriately enough, linking a spiritual leader and a sex symbol, most famously, Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page spent a small fortune hoarding Crowley Yana, I guess, Crowley merchandise and history and stuff, including purchasing Balkenstein, the magician's dilapidated former home on Loch Ness. Wow, that's crazy. I don't think even if I was rich that I would go out of my way, honestly, to purchase a home just because an occultist supposedly lived there. Goodness. Thelema was predicted on an approaching era in which the Egyptian deity Themist takes over from current ruler Horus, whose tenure Crowley referred to as the reign of crowned and conquering child, an apt description of the lineage of rock idols anointed at an early age. So it was frozen into perpetual adolescence. I'll get it out eventually. Excuse me. One of Crowley's recent biographers, Gary Lockman, characterizes the great beast as a colossal example of arrested development. He also cites the influence of Crowley's self-centered philosophy on songs from Iggy Pop's I Need More to The Doors When the Music's Over, and its declaration, we want the world and we want it now. So Lockman, though a severe critic of Crowley's more self-serving indulgences, is himself an example of his subject's allure for the rock crowd. So prior to becoming an author as well as an expert on the occult, Lockman was known as Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Gary Valentine, the bassist for none other than Blondie, early in the band's career. Although it was recorded after he left the band, he wrote the song I'm Always Touched by Your Presence, Dear. Under the sway of Crowley and other occultists, its lyrics touch on theosophy, contacting outer entities, and the telepathic connection Lockman shared with his then girlfriend. Creepy. It only took a generation after his passing for Crowley to transform from dangerous blasphemer to spiritual icon. Oh, wow. Crowley's rebellion against established norms, advocacy for sexual freedom, and spiritual questioning all resonated with counterculture, shaking off the strictures of its elder. LSD guru Timothy Leary once claimed to be carrying on much of the work that Crowley started. As were the 60s themselves, the opening lines to the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows, turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream, are borrowed from one of Leary's books, but the astral traveling's intimate could be traced back to Crowley. Man, there's a picture of Crowley on here. Creepy, creepy, creepy looking dude. I'm gonna be honest. Creepy, creepy looking dude. All right, well, let's carry on. Not to be outdone. The Rolling Stones, yes, the Rolling Stones also delved into occult studies. Mick Jagger, as well as Keith Richards, were mentored by the filmmaker and dedicated Thelemite Kenneth Anger, as reflected in Sympathy for the Devil. Jagger turned down the Lucifer role in Anger's Lucifer Rising, but had scored and appeared in his invocation of My Demon Brother. The cast list for Lucifer Rising ultimately included Jagger's then partner, singer Marine Faithfull. Jimmy Page composed a score for the film that was ultimately rejected after falling out with Anger, a habit the director shared with Crowley. The filmmaker ultimately turned to the Manson family's Bobby Busali, a member of Arthur Lee's band The Grassroots, who became Love, to compose the soundtrack from his prison cell. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. So as I was saying, that was very interesting. I had to take a quick break. My apologies. Oh, goodness. Page turned his attention to restoring Boleskine, commissioning artist Charles Pace to recreate the murals from Crowley's Abbey of Thelema in Sicily. That's creepy. Which had been restored by Anger decades after Crowley's eviction by Benito Mussolini. That's interesting. The grounds show up, the concert film, the song remains the same, and the album art for Led Zeppelin was illustrated with mystical symbols, excluding the dubious accusations of backmasking that have long dodged Stairway to Heaven. However, the band's lyrics borrow far more from Tolkien and American blues than from Crowley on his pagan peers. Yeah. Yep. uh, Led Zeppelin, Lord of the Rings is throughout the whole Led Zeppelin music, and I love it. Keyboardist and singer Graham Bond, whose band, the Graham Bond Organization, was a launching pad for the likes of jazz rock guitar hero John McLaughlin. And the band Cream's Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker took his Crowley obsession to more tragic lengths. Albums like the 1970s Holy Magic and 71's We Put Our Magic on You are laced with references to Thelema and other historic, but Bond sank into mental illness, claiming to be Crowley's son before throwing himself in front of a train in 1974. This is crazy. I never knew any of this. See, I'm learning this stuff as I'm talking to you all. This is crazy. And here we go. David Bowie was dabbling in any number of fringe interests: Egyptian mysticism, the Kabbalah, the Nazi hunt for the Holy Grail. By the time he recorded Hunky Dory in 1971, and the best hardly escaped his notice. The lyrics for Quicksand began with this sentence: I'm closer to the golden dawn, immersed in Crowley's uniform of imagery. Even Sly and the Family Stone summoned Crowley. However, inadvertently, everybody is a star, echoes Crowley's. Every man and every woman is a star, one of the opening lines of his book of the law. The sentiment was in the air. Wow. So no genre has taken to Crowley quite like heavy metal. Even if, as with Ozzy's gold-selling single, The Understanding of the Man, as well as his gospel, often seems tenuous, at best. Goodness. Though they took their name from an Italian horror film, Black Sabbath, also drew inspiration from a 1934 novel, Dennis Wheatley's The Devil Rides Out, whose main villain was based on none other than Crowley. A 1968 film adaptation laid the groundwork for a host of high society cult narratives from Val Lewton's sardonic The Seventh Victim to Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby. Who doesn't remember Rosemary's Baby? Again, I'm aging myself. I know I'm aging myself. I'm 45. I'll just tell you, I am 45. There's no shame in my age. I look dang good for my age. Iron Maiden, the band Iron Maiden, perhaps the most literarily inclined of metal bands, has evoked Crowley often. The title song from The Number of the Beast turned Crowley's adopted numerals into a sing-along, while the later Moonchild is based on Crowley's 1917 novel of the same name. Leader singer Bruce Dickinson even penned a tongue-in-cheek 2008 horror film called alternately Chemical Wedding or Crowley, in which the occultist is reincarnated through a modern-day Cambridge professor. Wow. This is a lot to unpack, man. It's crazy. This person did an amazing job with this article. So I'm definitely going to give them credit. Like, they deserve credit. They did an amazing job with this article, as you can hear when I'm not butchering the words. The title of Celtic's Frost, a 1985 classic to Megatherion, is another of Crowley's many pseudonyms. It's Greek for the great beast, though it wasn't until 20 years later that they directly cited his work in the song Os Aspni Vel Dath. Marilyn Manson's Misery Machine. I knew it was a matter of time before they got to Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson's Misery Machine charts a joyride down Highway 666 to the Abbey of Thelema. More experimental as well as industrial bands return the embrace of Crowley to his actual philosophies rather than to his cartoonish depiction. So, current 93 were virtual Crowley apostles, with founder David Tibbett castigating the metal conjunct for their minister interpretations. In a 1983 article, Throbbing Gristles United features a chant of Love is the Law, half of Crowley's traditional sign-off. Love is the law. Love under will, killing jokes. The Fall Because took its title from Crowley's writings in Secret Chiefs 3, led by Mr. Bungle. Faith No More guitarist Trey Prudence was named for the mysterious figures guiding humanity, its belief systems including Thelema and the Golden Dawn. Oh, wow. So you expect to find Crowley lurking in the shadows, conjured by metal and industrial bands. genres traditionally drawn to the darkness. But his influence is widespread enough that even blue-eyed soul singer Daryl Hall evokes him on his 1980 solo album, Sacred Songs Without Tears. The album's final closing track is based on the published book Magic Without Tears. Wow. So in recent years, Crowley's t-shirts have been spotted on both provocateurs Tyler and the Creator and non-diabolical pop stars Kevin Jonas. A decade ago, Sierra could be seen in matching shawl and boots that touted the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Jay-Z donned a hoodie emblazoned with "Do What Thou Wilt" in a behind-the-scenes clip of his post-apocalyptic video for "Run This Town." Itself accused, however, unconvincingly, of smuggling occult imagery into mainstream. The rapper Abe Soul immersed himself in Crowley research for his 2016 LP, "Do What Thou Wilt." Man. And yet they say Harry Potter is evil. I'm just throwing that out there. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. And yeah, people said Harry Potter's evil. Just saying. Let that sink in. Which might provide some glimmer of an answer to Ozzy's conundrum. What really went on in Crowley's head? Was the allure of the forbidden, transgressive, why can't I say that? Transgressive, which isn't as historic or unusual as we might want to believe. Sean Brady, who wrote this article, did an amazing job with this article. I didn't do such a good job with pronouncing things. I don't do his article justice, but I will put a link to his article. Sean Brady, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this journalist. He is a Philadelphia-based journalist who covers jazz along with an eclectic array of arts, culture, and travel. He contributes regularly to the Philadelphia Inquirer and Jazz Times and Jazzies magazines. He has also written for NPR Music, the AV Club, Downbeat, Metro, among other outlets. He did an incredible job with this article, and I appreciate that he did this article because it really helps podcasters like me when we do research on topics such as Aleister Crowley. I didn't do his article justice, but I am going to link it below so that you all can read it for yourselves. So, like I said, Aleister Crowley was born on October 12th, 1875, Royal Leamington Spa, England, and he died December 1st, 1947, in Hastings. He was a British occultist, writer, and mountaineer who was a practitioner of magic, as he spelt it with a K, and called himself the Beast 666, drawing on the number of the beast mentioned in the book of Revelation. He was denounced in his own time for his decadent lifestyle and had few followers, but he became a cult figure after his death. Isn't that usually how it goes? And this comes from Britannica.com. I always go to Britannica.com or Wikipedia when I do these podcasts because they're pretty reliable with their resources. Crowley's father was an heir to a brewing fortune who became an evangelist for Plymouth Brethren, a non-conformist religion denomination. So the younger Crowley, however, formed an aversion to Christianity early in life. He was a student of Trinity College, University of Cambridge, and he began to use the name Aleister and gain a reputation for skill at chess. In 1898, he left the university without taking a degree. That's weird. And his own inheritance left him free to travel widely and to arrange for the publication of his writings. His first book of poetry appeared in 1898, and numerous books followed. So, Crowley being a mountaineer, he honed his skills on cliffs in Great Britain before taking part in pioneering attempts to climb Earth's second and third highest mountain, K2, and this is going to be hard to pronounce. Kanchenjunga, the K2 expedition of 1902 reached an elevation of 18,600 feet, 5,670 meters, while the Kanchenjunga expedition 3 years later was marred by tragedy when 4 of Crowley's fellow climbers were killed in an avalanche. It was said that Crowley, who had advised them against taking the fatal route, ignored cries for help from the survivors of the accident. Ooh. So, like many other religious skeptics of the 19th century, Crowley became interested in occultism. In 1898, he joined the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an organization derived from the Rosicrucians. One of Crowley's rivals within London Golden Dawn group was the poet William Butler Yeats. On a visit to Egypt in 1904, Crowley reported mystical experiences and wrote the Book of Law, a prose poem, which he had claimed had been dictated to him by a discarnate being called Awas. In it, he formulated his most famous teaching: "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." The sentiment was not new. The French author Francis Rabelais had expressed it more than 300 years earlier in Gargantua and Pantagruel, but Crowley made it the basis of new religion. He called it Thelema. Thelema being the Greek word for will. The Book of Law was accepted as a scripture by the Ordo Templi Orientis, a mystical group of German origin, and about 1907, Crowley founded his own order, AA, using initials that stood for the Latin words for silver star. Starting in 1909, he disseminated his teachings in the periodical The Equinox, and his assistance in the early years of this endeavor was J.F.C. Fuller, later a well-known military strategist and historian. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of sordid history there. That's crazy. There's so much in this article that I'm not going to go over everything. I'm going to leave some of it for you all to read for yourself, but this is very, very, very interesting. Like I said, Crowley had money, very much so had money, and this allowed him to go on expeditions and to travel and to publish his books and all that. But his last notable achievement was the publication of the Book of Thoth in 1944, in which he interpreted a new tarot card deck called the Thoth that he had designed in collaboration with the artist Frida Harris. Crowley died in poverty and obscurity in English rooming house in 1947, but after his death he became a figure of fascination in popular culture. The Beatles put his picture on the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album cover. Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page purchased the house previously owned by Crowley near Loch Ness in Scotland, which I had told you before. So, why is it when when an artist dies, that's when they get discovered, that's when they become famous? I'm just saying, like, I always joke about that. Maybe I shouldn't joke about that, but I do artwork, and I have won an award for the Lifetime Movie Channel, which is at East End. One of my art pieces got picked to be put on their Facebook page, and I won a little bit of money. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but I won a little bit. I was able to purchase a camera for my mom, and she still uses that camera to this day. So, I'm grateful that somebody recognized my work as being good enough, I guess. So yeah, there's that. They always call it struggling artist because it's really, really, really hard to get your work out there. It's really hard to get your work recognized and seen by people. I'm 45 years old and I've been doing artwork freehand, and I have been creative since the age of like 6. I've been doing it since I was 6 years old. So, and I haven't really gotten anywheres with my artwork. I'm hoping for hope. I'm hoping the right person will see my artwork, and that will launch me into other people seeing my artwork and not necessarily becoming a famous artist, but at least, one that can make some money, somewhat of a profit off of my work. Yeah. If you like these episodes, please like and subscribe to my page. I would really, really appreciate it. Like and subscribe to my channel and share. I hope I didn't butcher too many of the words in this podcast. Um, I am so terrible at pronouncing things. It's awful. And I stutter a lot. I apologize. But hopefully you still like these podcast episodes, and hopefully they're still entertaining to you all. I'm not sure who I'm going to be talking about next week. I'm sure I can think of somebody. Somebody will come to mind, and hopefully you enjoy these episodes. And if you have somebody that you would like me to research and like me to talk about on my podcast episodes, please let me know. I am always open to suggestions, and I will give you a shout out. I will give you credit. I always like to give credit where credit is due because, well, I don't want to plagiarize. Don't want to get in trouble for that. And I don't want to get in trouble for copyright. So yeah, there's that. But I always like to give credit where credit is due. If you would like to sponsor my podcast, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. If you would like to send donations so that I can update my recording equipment so that I can record on site, gas money, travel, I can do some recordings on site and actually do Belongs to the Shadows shows again, not just podcasts. Anyhow, I hope you all are having a great day, and until next time, stay creepy.